Welcome to our second Fireside chat. So now moving from New Zealand, we touch on Australia, where we've seen them now come through the pandemic and start to resume life as normal. It's my great pleasure to welcome Shayne Harris, National Head of Residential for Knight Frank in Australia, to come and chat to us about what life is like on the ground there at the moment. Over to you, Shayne.
So life here is pretty good, Victoria. We've come through relatively unscathed. So we've had a bit over 7,000 coronavirus cases. We're down to under 600 active cases now. Really exciting time for the Australians. So there's going to be 50 people allowed in the pubs from the 1st of June. And the first game of rugby league is happening tonight. So everyone here is feeling fairly optimistic about how things are going.
Sounds like a great place to be. Definitely looking forward to being able to go back to watch sport again and to socialise. So what has this meant then? You've got a position where you're in a really favourable place globally. You've got people obviously seeing how you're coming through COVID and being interested in property there. What are you seeing in terms of the appetite for property in Australia at the moment?
Interest from overseas, particularly from expats, has really picked up since coronavirus hit the ground here. As an example, we're marketing a house on the North Shore, expensive asset, beautiful home. Over 25% of the inquiries from expats, particularly in Singapore and Hong Kong, willing to engage with us on a deeper level than they traditionally would. So normally they just send you a fake mobile number, but now they're wanting to get on the phone, understand the market, understand where things are at. And obviously the currency play is feeding that demand as well.
It's interesting, that expat flight piece. We're definitely seeing it into different markets. And as you highlighted there, that flight back home into Australia, you've got these great open spaces, great quality of life, and it's all these things that people are looking for in terms of their tick boxes for where they want to be located, should this ever happen again, or just for quality of life going forward. Have you seen a change in the demographic of people inquiring, and also in terms of the way that they're interacting with property as a result of COVID?
So we obviously moved to online virtual tours fairly quickly at the commencement of the pandemic to facilitate inspections. Otherwise, being in complete lockdown, we couldn't have done that. And then we've continued to provide that service to people. But what we're finding now, as people come out of the lockdown, back into the marketplace, it's a great pre-qualification tool to give them a virtual tour so they can get an understanding of the house and whether or not they actually want to go and inspect it. And then from there, of course, we've had open homes going for about 3 weeks now. People want to come and touch and feel and have a look through, turn the tap on, flush the toilet, all those sorts of things. So for the most part, I think virtual tours are here to stay, and I think that's a positive thing for real estate. But everyone typically on the ground here, back at the open houses, having a look and getting an idea of whether or not they're truly interested.
That comes back to that point really of qualifying what you're looking for. We're all busy people leading busy lives. And if you don't live down the road from the properties you're going to view, actually being able to pre-qualify them beforehand really does help save a lot of time, not only for the person looking and the agent, but really the seller. And I guess in these times, sellers aren't going to want to have lots of people traipsing through their homes. So us being able to really pre-qualify them before they go through the door means they're not going to waste time setting the house up, putting the fresh flowers out for their person to walk in and then walk straight out again.
Nothing worse.
No, definitely nothing worse.
You almost plead them to stay and just look around just to placate the vendor.
Yeah, we've all been there where you've had a viewing where you're like, oh gosh, I know this person's gone a huge amount of effort and I wish I'd realised beforehand this wasn't going to be right for you. It feels like technology has advanced so quickly in such a short space of time, and we just touched on expats looking back into Australia. You've obviously had a big amount of people coming to study in Australia. So how do you see the current status in terms of flights not being able to come into Australia impacting that part of the market?
That obviously has a short-term impact. One of the key priorities for the government, though, is to get overseas students back into Australia. That will be a slow wind-up process. So I think the numbers will be reduced for the balance of 2020 and probably 2021. But obviously the impact that's had on the rental market. So people haven't been going to school. A lot of people have gone home to wherever they originally came from. But, you know, people typically have a connection with Australia when they buy property in Australia. So whether it's that they have family here, whether or not their child's going to come and be educated here, there's a real connection genuinely. People don't just think, oh, what a great idea, I might buy an apartment in Australia, you know, on a whim. So it's the connection piece. So I think long-term, families, typical first, second, third generation, you know, they'll still continue to invest here and come here to be educated.
We touched a little bit before about going back to work. So actually Knight Frank went back into the office, didn't they? 2 weeks ago now, I think it is.
2 weeks, yeah.
Time seems to sort of blur. How is that evolution back into the office worked? And have you seen many changes to working practices coming out of COVID-19?
So we're obviously continuing to social distance in the office. So we have a very large office footprint, as you know, here in Sydney, but we only have 10 people in there at a time. So it's a really small number. There are cafes, there are restaurants open nearby. Food vendors are, starting to open their doors more and more, but it's a bit of a slow wind-up process because typically we would have well over 150 people in the office. We've got 10 at the moment, so the numbers are greatly reduced. However, from the 1st of June, again, we think that the government will further loosen the restrictions and Knight Frank as a business will start to get more and more people back in. There's no doubt though, Victoria, as you would probably agree, that the way we work and the amount of time we spend in the office has probably changed forever.
We've definitely gone through a huge work from home experiment, which has shown that we can work from home and be productive from home. And I definitely see that we're going to see more of that. But I think also, as we see as a business, it's all about our connections with each other. And I know that your team was so excited to get back into the office and see each other and interact, although be it at a social distance, which is what really is sort of what the business is about, isn't it? And what property is about. It's all about people and those connections.
Absolutely. The team celebrated with beer and pizza for lunch. First day back.
So then I guess the question on people's lips at the moment is now the time to invest in Australia? You've got a great currency play opportunity, which is definitely driving not only expats, but investors to look at the Australian market. And you are in a great position in terms of your numbers for COVID, but is it now, or should people be waiting another couple of quarters to really see the best opportunities?
I think the currency play for overseas investors is obviously important at the moment because there is a 6 to 10% reduction for most currencies, particularly from Asia Pacific. The market here has been fueled by low stock levels. So we are 35% down number of available listings year on year. I actually expect that number will continue to tighten through the back end of 2020 as well. So I don't think that's going to change in the short term. That is obviously creating price stability as well. So there are not big price reductions across the market other than in the oversupplied apartment markets, and those markets were having problems before coronavirus hit anyway. So we expect that people should exercise real caution around those markets because there's going to be really high vacancy rates. There'll be settlement issues, valuation issues as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's about that flight to safety and quality, and you've talked about a couple of instructions to me over the past few weeks where, regardless of it being COVID, they've been sort of inundated with interest because of the quality of the property. Yeah. And people still need to move. People still are looking to upsize, downsize, right-size their property. So regardless of the COVID-19 situation, now with people being able to actually touch and feel again, as you say, I guess we're going to see hopefully a big uptick in what normally would be a quiet market because you're going into your sort of quieter period, aren't you?
Yeah, and look, the other thing we talked about to a client earlier today was that for the first time in a very, very long time, the high net worth Australians are going to be in Australia through the winter months because typically they'd go skiing or they'd take off for the school holidays and they go overseas to a warmer place. Yeah. They're not going anywhere because they can't this year. So I think there's a real opportunity to capture the attention of those people because essentially they'll be sitting in their houses or in cafes, sipping coffee, reading the paper, thinking about, is my house what I need now that I'm going to be working from home far more than I ever have.
We also touched on, when we chatted the other day about a client, the fact that people are looking to have that second home in Australia, because obviously Australia offers such a diverse range of terrain. You can have your city dwelling, your beach living, so talk a little bit about that. What have you seen in terms of some of your clients' appetites for a second home?
The surrounding lifestyle markets of Sydney, I think, are going to get a real uptick because as we talked about the other day, Victoria, we've got a house in the Southern Highland, which is a beautiful asset. We've had several people saying, well, I'm not going overseas for the next 5 or 6 years because I don't feel comfortable or don't think that I'm going to be able to. People, are spending very large amounts of money on these vacations and holidays. So they're looking around and saying, well, for the next 5 or 6 years, let's go and sit by the beach, throughout the school holidays over the Christmas months, or let's go down to the Southern Highlands and buy a beautiful country home on some acreage and, have some animals and do all that sort of stuff. So I think there's going to be a real push into those lifestyle markets and even people relocating. So people have now realised we don't have to be in the office every day. And some companies will take the line that you don't have to come in here. You've been really productive through this period and we're really happy with that. So I think people will relocate outside of the major centralised markets as well.
Continue to see that dynamic plays out and what that does to prices. I think a lot of people have expected COVID to push prices down. But from what you're telling me and what we're seeing, actually, for the right assets, they're achieving the prices you would expect.
And even more.
Even more. I guess it's that scarcity that you just talked about, you know, lack of stock. If people have a need and a drive to move, there's only one home like that. So if they want it, they have to go for it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing